What's up guys, it's DarkArmedDuelist and I'm going to be doing a branded Magical Musketeer deck profile. So I'm really excited for you guys because this deck is an extremely fun deck to play. That's one of my favorite decks playing one of my favorite engines. And it's absolutely insane how well these two work together. So without further ado guys, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, hit the bell in there so you can become part of Notification Squad, and definitely check out the Patreon down in the description below for all those awesome rewards, like getting your name screwed for every single video, getting a signed card sent in the mail, and even getting to request a deck profile every single month you're a patron, along with test hands. So without further ado, let's get straight on into this. So first off, we're going to be playing 3 copies of Magical Musketeer Caspar. This card is a great 3-of, and all of your Magical Musketeers share a common effect. That during either player's turn, you can activate Magical Musket spells and trap cards from your hand. And if a spell or trap card is activated in this card's column, then you get a unique effect, which is really awesome because they also go off when your opponent activates spells and traps in their column, which is absolutely insane. But this card's unique effect is that you can add a Magical Musket card from your deck to your hand, but not a card with the same name as the activated card, which is a really good effect to be able to add any of the Magical Musket cards that you need from your deck to your hand. We then play 3 copies of Magical Musketeer Starfire. Starfire is a great 3-of because she has the ability that you can special summon out a level 4 or lower Magical Musketeer monster from your deck in defense position except another copy of herself when a spell trap card is activated in her column, which is just really good. We then play 3 copies of Magical Musketeer Kid Brave. Kid Brave is a great card because it helps us draw cards in the deck, because when a spell trap card is activated in Kid Brave's column, you get to discard a Magical Musket card to draw 2 cards, which is really good. We then play 2 copies of Magical Musketeer Doc. Doc is a good 2-of as well in this deck because it has the ability if a spell or trap card is activated in this card's column, then you can add a Magical Musket card from your graveyard to your hand, but not a card with the same name as the activated card, which is a pretty good effect to be able to add any of the ones that you need back from your graveyard to your hand. We then play a single copy of Magical Musketeer Calamity. Calamity is a good 1-of in the deck that's basically a walking monster reborn, that if a spell or trap card is activated in her column, then you get to target a Magical Musket monster in your graveyard and special summon it in defense position, which is a really good effect just to get another monster on your field. We then play 2 copies of Aluber. Aluber is really good to be able to grab any of the branded cards that you're going to need directly from your deck to your hand, because if this card is normal or special summon, you can add a branded spell or trap from your deck to your hand, and if a face-up fusion monster you control is destroyed by battle or leaves the field because of an opponent's card effect, while this card's in the graveyard, you can target an effect monster that your opponent controls, special summon this card, and if you do, negate the targeted monster's effects until the end phase of this turn, but you can only use 1 Aluber effect per turn and only once that turn. But this card is a really good 2-of in the deck because you can summon it off of Branded Opening to be able to grab Branded Fusion. We then play 2 copies of Fallen of Albaz. Fallen of Albaz is a great 2-of in the deck because we're playing the branded package, so you're going to need this card to activate Branded Fusion, but this card is also a super poly on legs, so it's a definite 2-of in this build. We then play a single copy of the Light Hex Seal Fusion. The Light Hex Seal Fusion is a really good card in this deck because it helps us go for all sorts of different boss monsters when we go in for Albion, so this card is a definite 1-of in this build. So that's it for the monsters, guys. Let's get into the spells. So for the spells, we're going to be playing a single copy of Monster Reborn. Monster Reborn is a really good card in this deck because it helps us get into all sorts of different plays and get our monsters back on the field. We then play a single copy of Called by the Grave. Called by the Grave is really good so we don't get hand trapped while we're getting our searches off with cards like Caspar. We then play a single copy of Harpy's Feather Duster just in case we're playing against a back row heavy deck. We can use this card to be able to get rid of our opponent's back row. We then play a single copy of Branded in Red. Branded in Red is a really good card to add from deck to hand after you've already activated Branded Fusion when you search it off of your Aluber. So this card is a really good card because it lets you target a Despia monster or a Fallen of Albaz in the graveyard and add that target to your hand. Then you can apply the effect to be able to fusion summon a level 8 or higher fusion monster from your extract by banishing the fusion materials listed on it from your hand or field, but it can't attack directly. So this card is a great card to search after you've already resolved your copy of Branded Fusion, because you can have this card set and then bring back Fallen of Albaz back to your field, which is a really good effect. We then play 3 copies of Branded Opening. Branded Opening is a really good card in the deck that has the ability that you discard a card and then take a Despia monster from your deck and either add it to your hand or special summon it in defense position, which we're always going to be special summoning in defense position to be able to bring out the Aluber to then search out your Branded Fusion. But this card also has the ability that for the rest of the turn, after this card resolves, you can't special summon monsters from the X deck except for fusion monsters, which is not that big of a deal because Magical Musketeers already didn't special summon from the X deck that much anyways. And if a fusion monsters you control would be destroyed by a card effect, you manage this card from your graveyard instead, giving you that added layer of protection. We then play 3 copies of Branded Fusion. Branded Fusion is one of the most powerful fusion spells ever created in this game, and has a really powerful effect to fusion summon a fusion monster that mentions a Fallen of Albaz as a material from your X deck using 2 monsters from your hand deck or field as fusion material. But for the turn that you activate this card, it locks you into fusion summoning, which is again not that big of a deal because your Magical Musketeers aren't special summoning from the X deck that much anyways. We then play 3 copies of Magical Musket Cross Domination. Cross Domination is a really good 3-up because it has the ability, if you control a Magical Musket monster, then you can target a face-up monster on the field, and until the end phase of this turn, it changes its attack and defense to 0, and also its effects are negated, which is a really awesome effect, especially since this card is a quick play spell and you can activate it directly from your hand with your Magical Musketeers on the field. So that's it for the spells, guys. Let's get into the traps. So for the traps, we're going to be playing a single copy of Magical Musket Crooked Crown. Crooked Crown is a good 1-of in the deck that has the ability you can only control 1 face-up copy of this card, and during the main phase you can special summon out a Magical Musket monster from your hand, and if you do, then your opponent's main monster zone in that monster's current column is unused. If it's unused, then that zone cannot be used until the end phase of this turn, even if this card leaves the field, which is a pretty good effect to lock down one of your opponent's monster zones, which is just really good. We then play a single copy of Needle Dancing. Needle Dancing is really good because if you control a Magical Musketeer monster, then you can target up to 3 cards in the graveyards and banish them, which is really good to get combo pieces out of the grave. We then play 3 copies of Magical Musket Desperado. Desperado is really good because if you control a Magical Musket monster, you can target a face-up card on the field and destroy it, which is really good just to have this card to be able to search out of the deck with your copies of Caspar to be able to pop a card on the field. We then play 2 copies of Magical Musket Last Stand. Last Stand is a great card because when your opponent activates a spell or trap card, while you control a Magical Musket card, you can negate the activation if you do destroy that card, which is just really good. We then play 3 copies of Infinite Impermanence. Infinite Impermanence might as well be a Magical Musket card because you can activate it directly from your hand, but it has the ability that you can target a face-up monster that your opponent controls and negate its effects until the end phase of the turn. Then if this card was set before activation, it also locks down that column's spells and trap cards, which is just a really good effect. And if you control no cards, you can activate this card from your hand, which is a really good effect. So that's it for the main deck, guys. Let's get into the extra deck. So for the extra deck, we're going to be playing a single copy of Mirror Jade. Mirror Jade is a really good boss monster that's super easy to summon to your side of the field. And it's just really easy to summon because you're either going to go in for the Lubellion line, which you're going to summon Mirror Jade as the last monster, or go for the Albion line, which we have a bunch of different monsters you can summon as the end of the line. But this card is really good because it has the ability that if you use this card, you can also banish a monster on the field, and also has the ability that you can't use the effect for the rest of the turn or the following turn, which is not that big of a deal because being able to banish a monster on the field is just really good. It also has the ability that if this card is destroyed, or if this card leaves the field because of an opponent's card, then you can destroy all monsters your opponent controls during the end phase of that turn, which is a really good effect. We then play a single copy of Lubellion because Lubellion is just a really good card to be able to shuffle itself back into the extra deck with a Fallen of Albaz to summon out your copy of Mirror Jade, but the only downside of this card is to activate that effect, you have to discard a card. We then play 2 copies of Albion. Albion is basically like a walking miracle fusion that has the ability, if this card is fusion summoned, then you can fusion summon a level 8 or lower fusion monster from your X deck, except another copy of this card, by banishing fusion materials listed on it from your hand, field, or graveyard, which is always where you're going to be banishing your cards from, is from the graveyard, because you're going to banish a Fallen of Albaz plus the Light Hex Seal fusion that you use to summon this card to summon out a bunch of different boss monsters that you might need to summon out in different situations. We then play a single copy of the Abyss Dragon. Abyss Dragon is basically like a Chimera Tech Fortress Dragon for Fallen of Albaz and Dragon monsters, which is just really, really good. We then play a single copy of Red Eye's Dark Dragoon, which is one of the cards we can actually summon off our Albion with the Light Hex Seal Fusion and Fallen of Albaz, because the Light Hex Seal Fusion can count as Dark Magician, and your copy of Fallen of Albaz can count as the Dragon Effect monster. This card is basically a walking negate when you put it on the field, and it can gain 1,000 attack points once it negates a card, which is just really, really good. We then play a single copy of Blue Eyes Tyrant Dragon. Tyrant Dragon is really good because you can use the Light Hex Seal Fusion to count as Blue Eyes White Dragon, and the Fallen of Albaz to count as the Dragon monster, which is really, really nice. And it must either be Fusion Summon or Special Summon from the extra deck by triggering a Blue Eyes White Dragon equipped with a Fusion monster, and it's unaffected by trap cards or effects, and this card can attack all monsters that your opponent controls once each, and then once per turn. At the end of the damage step, if this card battled, then you can target a trap card in your graveyard and set it to your spell and trap card zone, which comes in very handy in a Magical Musketeer deck because you're putting your spells and traps back on your side of the field, or your traps back on your side of the field to use them again. We're then playing a single copy of Dracos Tapalia, just in case we need to make this card. It's really easy to make in the deck because it just takes a fusion monster plus a dark monster to make this card, but it's just a great card in this deck. We then play a single copy of Access Code. Access Code is a great card to summon to your side of the field because it can pop multiple cards on the field, and it's overall just a great boss monster. One copy of Unicorn to spin stuff, Phoenix to pop spells and traps, Cerberus to pop monsters for the Nightmare package. One copy of IP Masquerade, because IP Masquerade can make Unicorn during the opponent's turn. And finally, 2 copies of Magical Musketeer Max. Now, Magical Musketeer Max is a really, really good card. You don't summon it quite as much with the branded package, but it's still really good because if this card is Link Summon, you can activate one of these effects. You either add Magical Musket spells or traps with different names from your deck to your hand up to the number of different names. You add those cards equal to the current number of monsters that your opponent controls, which is really, really good. So if your opponent controls 3 monsters on their side of the field, then you can add 3 Magical Musket spell or traps directly from your deck to your hand. And if you special summon a Magical Musket monster with different names from your deck up to the number of spells and traps your opponent controls, which is a really good effect because you can special summon out a bunch of Magical Muskets if your opponent is playing a very back row heavy deck. This card is also a Link 1, so it's very easy to make in this deck. So that's it for the deck, guys. I hope you did enjoy it. It's super fun to be able to play, especially with how well these 2 engines work together. By just activating like a branded fusion under one of your Magical Musket monsters, it'll get a search or a special summon or a discard and draw 2. And it's just really, really awesome to be able to play this deck, being able to summon out some really cool boss monsters. So that's it for this one, guys. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, hit the bell in there so you can come for our notification squad, and we'll see you guys in the next video. See you later, guys.